Joining us now is Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal Party president and Sky News contributor. Michael, thank you for joining us on Power Hour. The federal election is approaching fast and polling's not looking good for the coalition. The latest news poll in The Australian showed support for the coalition fell to 35%. But polling expert Kos Samara says that it's not going to take much for opposition leader Peter Dutton to win back young voters. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not sure at this point in the race. I feel like it would actually take a lot. What's your assessment?
Well, Gabriella, there's no doubt that Albanese's had the best of the first part of the campaign, but the signature housing policy released by Michael Kroger and Peter Dutton is hopefully a game changer amongst young people. Albo's policy of building 100,000 houses is just not believable. Home ownership is incredibly important. It's a very strong Liberal Party brand equity dating back to the 1940s. Labor have never been big on home ownership. Notoriously, they described homeowners as little capitalists many years ago in the 40s. And it's never been an issue much for Labor. And to think that the Labor government could get 100,000 houses built for first home buyers is just preposterous. They haven't built one under the Housing Australia Future Fund. So that could be a really important policy for young people because home ownership is something that people should aspire to. It's out of reach for people. And I think what Michael Kroger has announced is, going to win a lot of votes for the coalition.
Okay, look, I want to speak to you about Iran. Donald Trump has reiterated that Iran must abandon any hope of obtaining a nuclear weapon as the US prepares for more talks. Trump says that Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. Classic Trump rhetoric there. But what can we really expect from talks between Iran and the United States?
Well, look, Iran's in a much weakened position now. As we know, their allies have been smashed in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Yemen. They've lost all their supply chain route through Syria to Lebanon. Their economy is incredibly weak. There is growing internal opposition. Their air defences were smashed by the Israelis. They've got the Turkish government that strongly opposes them because the Turkish government are now very supportive of the new regime in Syria, et cetera, et cetera. So Iran's in a much weakened position economically, politically and militarily. And so I would expect in due course there will be some kind of deal done, brokered by the Americans, because Iran's just not in a position to build a nuclear bomb and then have them all smashed. If they don't agree to something, then you'd expect the Israelis will destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities, and that may well be a death knell to the Iranian government. So they're going to have to do something. They're not in a position. They're not in a strong position. They don't hold any cards. They don't hold many cards these days, as Trump might famously say. So I expect something to happen in the next few months. Where Iran agrees not to develop nuclear weapons, Gab.
Okay, and let's talk about Hamas. Hamas has now rejected an Israeli ceasefire proposal brokered by Egypt, according to Al Jazeera, and the plan included a 45-day pause and the release of all the hostages, as we cannot forget there are more than 50 still being held by Hamas terrorists. But you say Iran doesn't hold the cards. What about Hamas? What options are there for Hamas?
Well, their cards are getting weaker by the day as well. We just saw the French president meeting the Palestinian Authority leader, Mahmoud Abbas. They're talking about some kind of transition where the Palestinian Authority becomes the government in Gaza. Hamas's weapons supply has been stopped because of the Iranians, for the reasons I explained. Their leaders have been killed. Bit by bit, the Hamas position gets weaker by the day. And so, however, the Israelis said, well, you have to disarm as a part of the peace process. Well, they won't do that. They'll fight to the death. But unfortunately for Hamas, it looks like death is coming because they'd have no international support now without the Iranians helping them. So day by day, the Hamas position is weaker, and that makes the position stronger of the Israelis and of Hamas's opposition amongst the Arab states, which is almost universal now.
Finally, Michael, Ukraine, Donald Trump has blamed Zelensky for allowing the war to happen. Let's take a listen.
But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it. and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Michael, what's your assessment of where this is really at? It doesn't appear that it's going the way that Trump wanted.
No, well, that's complete nonsense. I mean, he shouldn't keep saying Zelensky started the war. I mean, patently, obviously, he didn't. So he seems to have this shocking blind spot in relation to Zelensky. The fact of the matter is that the Russians started the war. Everybody knows that. Trump is trying not to criticise the Russians publicly because he needs the Russians to come to the table and agree with a peace deal. We understand that, but it's not going as well as he thought it would go. The Russians might just wait him out. So he said he'd resolve it in one day. That was never going to be possible. That was more, a statement of hope rather than something he thought he'd achieve.
Of course.
But are those peace deals? Is the peace deal going well? No, not going well. And the Russians are being very intransigent. Nothing seems to be imminent in relation to that. So Trump needs to increase threats against Russia if they don't come to the table, not increase threats against Zelensky because he didn't start the war. And he'd be the first person who would want to stop it, but he wants to do it on reasonable grounds, and that's why, Trump needs to pressure the Russians more, and that's the reason it's not stopped because the Russians are holding firm. Gabriella.
Michael Kroger, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.